Welcome to the presentation of the paper entitled From Connection to Community, a medium-term contribution of mobile teacher training in Madagascar, the genesis of a social network. My name is Eilean von Lautz-Cauzanet. To begin with, I'd like to show you two pictures that illustrate well the research context and resulting question. On the left, we see teachers taking part in a training course using a mobile phone. We're in the year 2012. The goal of the training here is to improve classroom practices and French skills. On the right, the graph illustrates an unexpected contribution of the training. Years later, we're now in 2014. The graph you see illustrates teachers communicating with each other using the same mobile they received 2 years before. This is basically the key result of the here presented study and the answer to the question, how can we use social network analysis to analyze if the training has led to a teacher network? And if so, what does the network tell us about the contribution and the role of the mobile phone? During the last 2 decades, there has been increasing interest towards the use of ICTs to improve the quality and access to teacher training. The need to do so appeared urgent in developing countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Here, over 6 million teachers must be recruited by 2030 in order to tackle, amongst others, the worrying student performance situation. This concerns teachers already in place and concerns both pedagogical skills and competences. And of course, this is even more challenging as there are financial constraints to consider, especially in these countries. In this context, mobile phones have attracted the attention of researchers and development actors in the African region. As you can see on this chart, the number of mobile subscriptions is continuously increasing. GSMA expects that by 2025, half of the population will have a mobile subscription, which is considerable. This expected ubiquity of mobile phones comes with high expectations with regards to improving also distance training. Indeed, many researchers consider that cell phones, mobile phones, are among the most promising technologies for distance teacher training. Mostly because of this ubiquity, literature argues that mobiles would allow for training schemes that would be cost-efficient and user-friendly, would allow to compensate the lack of training organizations, avoid teachers' long travel to training courses and institutions, and of course also facilitate access to diverse and quality resources, enhance personal training, and develop new literatures. Most of all, literature underlines that mobile phones and teacher training would allow for the creation of collaborative communities, which in turn would allow teachers to construct collectively the knowledge they would need. The enthusiasm for collaboration is comprehensible, as research has found that teacher collaboration improves student performance, which is, as we know, one of the leitmotifs behind the willingness to improve teacher training. The here presented research focused on the study of a specific mobile teacher training project, IFADEM Madagascar. IFADEM Madagascar is part of multiple training projects which have been implemented in various African countries. They have been initiated by the Association de la Francophonie and implemented in Madagascar by the Ministry of Education, the French Development Agency, and Orange, a French telecommunication provider present in Madagascar. The targeted regions, in this case in Madagascar, were 4 rural zones, including 2 characterized by really poor infrastructure and network coverage. These are Ambato Finlandrahana and Manandriana, you can see in the upper part of the map. From 2012 to 2013, 456 teachers took part in an in-service and mobile-supported teacher training project. Here, the project aimed to improve teachers' pedagogical skills and knowledge of French, which is the language teachers must teach in Madagascar, but very often they don't master it at all. The training combined both self-training and face-to-face training components, and every teacher was provided with a mobile phone as well as workbooks. All trainees gathered every 3 months for 3 days in large training waves, and in addition, they also met every month in small groups in their nearby villages with a tutor, and this tutor has been selected also among local supervisors. During these meetings, they worked together on the workbooks they had received, and the rest of the time they had to work autonomously, also using the mobile phones. On these mobile phones, they could find audio files that were directly related to the workbooks with exercises. And of course, the mobile phone was also used for free communications with tutors and peers, meaning they would not pay any communications with any other training participant. And finally, on this mobile phone, they would also receive on a daily basis an SMS with a quiz question they had to answer, and the correct answer was then sent back to them. The project was evaluated in 2013. During this evaluation process, 6 quantitative datasets were generated, as well as an interview report summarizing interviews conducted with 18 training participants. The evaluators concluded that teachers had developed non-prescribed usages both for professional and private purposes during the training. Most importantly, the evaluation had found strong indicators that teachers had created a form of mobile phone community and that there were strong signs of collaboration based on this mobile phone usage. This conclusion was the result mostly of an analysis of the call detail records. These are so important that I would like to present them in detail. Indeed, the call detail records need to be presented here in detail, as it's their existence that in the end allowed us to conduct the social network analysis. I show you here a detailed example. So, call detail records are recorded for every participant of the training. They allow us to know who is calling, if the call is incoming or outgoing, if the call partner is part of the training, or if it's an outside person, sort of to say. We can also distinguish between voice communications and SMS communication and localize the individual. Of course, what I show you here is absolutely confidential and was never presented as such in a public way. All participants agreed to have their call detail records analyzed for research purposes. Two years after the end of the pilot project, we started a research process and conducted first a qualitative and then a quantitative study. These studies revealed that the training has led to sustaining unexpected practices in the life of former training participants. These included using the phone in the classroom for pedagogical purposes, as well as using it for professional and private tasks and communication. Both studies confirmed that a significant proportion of former training participants continued to call each other in a sustainable manner. Finally, it appeared clearly that the added value of mobile usage was the fact that participants could use it for multiple purposes, and that the fact that they were using it for private and professional communications was a key aspect here. Given the strong indications for mobile teacher communications and collaboration, and in light of the availability of the call detail records, we decided to conduct a social network analysis. And our research question was, how can we use social network analysis to analyze if there's effectively a teacher network, its contributions, and the role of the mobile phone? To answer this research question, we combine three main social network analysis concepts and their method. Firstly, we looked at the structure of the network using measures like centrality, diameter, density, and closeness centrality. These allow to assess to which extent we can actually talk about a real structured network, and we can also see if there are signs for cohesion, if there is a network area that is more vulnerable than the other. Then we also looked at network processes and dynamics. Here, measures that are particularly important are centrality degree, betweeness centrality, and Eigenvector. They allow to assess if there are individuals which can be considered as influent and important because they have a lot of connections, or because they are very good and capable in transmitting information rapidly to the rest of the network. Finally, we also looked at the role and contributions of individuals within the network. So here we chose the so-called ego network analysis, which means that we conducted targeted interviews with individuals within groups to qualify the relationships they were having with other group members. For the extraction of the data from the call detail records, we used first Python and then Gephi, which is an open source software for network analysis and visualization. The first result of the social network analysis was the actual existence of an autonomous and sustainable teacher network, more than 2 years after the end of the pilot. The first considerable finding is that over half of former training participants continue to use the phone and are actually really part of a network you can see here. This is important to underline because, as we know, participants could use the phone for free during the training, but not afterwards. Now they pay for it. The graph you see here represents teachers. They are represented in nodes. And the node sizes are computed according to the centrality score. The colors refer to the group they belong to. Groups have been calculated by the modularity class function, a social network algorithm for group detection. When looking at socioeconomic characteristics of training participants, we can see that they are mostly from three training areas: Ambositra, Fandriana, and Ambato-Finlandrana. There are no training participants, former training participants from the region of Manandriana. Then, when we look at participants out degree centrality and in degree centrality, we can see that there's no extreme difference among network members, something we can also see visually. Some nodes are slightly bigger than others, but there are no huge differences. This means that only a few are solicited more than others. This graph highlights the nodes according to their closeness centrality scores. It shows an overall homogeneous network with nodes of same sizes. There are only two exceptions that you can see here on the left side of the graph, indicating a bigger vulnerability because dependence on only two actors to be connected to the network. Despite these two exceptions, we can again confirm that the network structure is stable because homogeneous and well connected. Finally, when we look in detail at the socioeconomic characteristics, we find that there is, at first sight, a geographical homophily. Indeed, when we look at the upper area of the graph, we see individuals living mostly in Ambositra, while the lower part of the graph is dominated by individuals from Fandriana. Also, each group is mostly composed of members from the same school district. However, the combination of socioeconomic characteristics and interview findings shows that the geographic homophily reflects actually a shared training experience. Indeed, most of the groups in the upper area have been trained in wave number 1, which has been organized in the Ambositra region. And the bottom part of the network was trained in wave number 2. With other words, people are in the same group not because they live nearby, but because they have shared an intense common experience, both face-to-face and via mobile phones. This is something that clearly also appeared in the interview findings. The second key result was that the mobile teacher network contributes effectively to innovation and collaboration among former training participants. When we looked at density scores, we could find that there's strong cohesion, strong density within the groups of the network. More precisely, there's higher density in the bottom part of the network, which we know is mostly composed of members from the same geographic location, Fandriana. And we also found that the density score is closer to 0 than to 1, which in SNA signifies that we can once again confirm a single network structure. Then when we looked at the clustering coefficient, we calculated that 20% of all possible connections within the graph are established. 100% would have meant that everyone is connected all the time with everyone, which is not a realistic characteristic of a network, of a teacher network. And it is also in line with interview findings that reported strong cohesion within the groups. What is even more interesting is that in these high density areas and groups, a lot of innovative and collaborative practices were reported, as we can see in this quote, for example. This quote is also an illustrative example of how innovative and collaborative practices are related to the type of relationship among former training participants. Indeed, the ego network analysis shows that in each group of the network, there are individuals who qualify their respective group members as either former colleagues or new colleagues connections they have made during the training. Only a few indicate that the group members are friends. This means that the observed group density is not a result of friends who just catch up and use the phone. It's the mixture of both professional and private ties that makes the difference. The same phone can be used to call the same person, but for two different purposes, professional and private. The importance of density must be underlined here once again. Indeed, we found that interviewers in high density zones reported more often and in more detailed manner innovative practices they developed and applied with their group members. Why? Because they have stronger relationships. Finally, the social network analysis found that there are teacher leaders who contribute to the sustainability of the network. Once we computed the graph according to centrality measures, showing those actors with high number of connections, the graph clearly shows that the teacher network hosts multiple network leaders. These are well distributed within the district, with most network leaders in the district of Fandriana. Also, every part hosts a network leader. The socioeconomic analysis then showed that the top leaders, as we call them, are mostly former tutors of the training, or they are so-called chef zaps. Chef zaps are local supervisors who oversee and meet teachers very regularly. We also looked at socioeconomic characteristics and questionnaires and saw that all chefs Zaps have very high phone familiarity and have been very intensive phone users during the training, even though they were not tutors, but treated like a normal teacher. When we then computed the graph so that it would show individuals with high Betweeness centrality scores, meaning a capacity to transmit rapidly information, we obtained a graph that shows that there are only a few network leaders that are leaders in the sense of rapid information transmission capability. As we can see, the two most important ones are located in the upper area. It is also interesting to note that chef Zaps, again, who already have been leaders in terms of having multiple connections, also remain leaders when it comes to information transmission. Finally, we also looked at individuals with high Eigenvector centrality scores, meaning we looked at individuals who occupy a favorable position as they are close to influential leaders. As we can see, it appears that it is more favorable to be located in the bottom part of the network. In a certain way, we can define this part as hotspot because it's the part where the most people with rapid information transmission capabilities and those with the most connections. So it is better for an individual to be located in that area. In a positive note, the other part of the network is, however, still connected to this network part. Finally, the ego network approach showed what an SNA software and calculations can't see, the personality of network leaders and why they are so important. Indeed, when we interviewed both in a targeted manner leaders and the group members, it clearly appeared that teacher network leaders have outstanding competences and skills. Concretely, they differentiated themselves from others by advanced French and pedagogical skills, a high sense of professionality, commitment, and proactivity. But they also had a broad range of social skills that seemed to be very valuable in the eyes of their group members and network members in general. The ego network approach also allowed us to find that they're extremely important for the network and its sustainability as they increase the added value by contributing, for example, through non-prescribed meetings with former trainees, but they also encourage collaboration and advocate for the use of mobile phones and other innovative approaches in the classroom. They were also advocating student-centered teaching practices among their surrounding teachers and made sure that the information flow was efficient within the whole network. Key also here is the fact that they were connecting the entire network with the outside world, so to say. Finally, 3 discussion points arose from the study. Firstly, this social network analysis could show that, thanks to the introduction of mobile phones during a shared training experience, teachers could set up a network structure that sustains after the end of the pilot project. We could also see that the phone is valuable as it is a tool that allows for rapid information transmission and hence also access to resources. Despite network coverage issues and distancing, the network is stable and even collaborative, especially in areas where individuals do have a relationship that is composed of face-to-face and mobile contact. Mobile connections are used to reinforce and sustain relationships. Most importantly, even if network coverage is of course indispensable to use the phone, it appears clearly that teachers have appropriated the tool to an extent that allows them to develop solutions and resolve problems when they can't connect. And this capacity and willingness is closely related to the shared training experience. With other words, the phone is important as it is also related to a very important bond. And to cultivate the bond and to enhance the bond and to make it develop, they need the phone. Secondly, the social network analysis shows also that the network itself allows to enhance and transform relationships, which in turn contributes to practices such as collaboration and innovation. The analysis of factors allowing to comprehend key contributions of the phone indicates a strong cohesion among groups, sustained through the usage of the phone. Individuals feel close to those individuals of their respective group and report regular collaboration with group members. The fact that this collaboration happens in groups is actually quite unsurprising. Indeed, in contrast to a network based on simple interaction, for example Facebook, collaboration with phones requires much more work, in the sense that it requires individuals to actively work together, and of course, in this case, also to pay, because they have to pay their mobile communications. It also means that they use the phone to ask, answer a question, or discuss a problem. All this is a more demanding task than those observable in simple interaction networks, showing again how valuable the phone and the network has become to them. The ego network interview indicates also the presence of instrumental and expressive ties, which show that the phone has a hybrid role. Indeed, having the possibility to combine professional and personal communications in a single connection is a key added value of the network. And it continues to motivate teachers to use it over time. Finally, it appears that the appropriation of the phone and the transformation of relationship led actually to the genesis of a network that serves, as observed by researchers, and here I quote, the circulation of information and resources that pertain to organizational goals, while also reflecting patterns of more emotionally and charged relationships that transport and diffuse resources as a social support, trust, and values. Finally, this study also showed that social network analysis is a powerful approach when it comes to identifying those individuals who contribute directly to the network and its sustainability. Indeed, leaders have complementary roles, access to resources, information sharing, and sometimes they even do both. The fact that we found that chefs ups, individuals who occupy on a daily basis the role of supervisors and managers, are also leaders in this IFADEM teacher network 2 years after the end of the pilot, is in line with the conceptual model of teacher leadership that we observe in research work from York and Barr and Duke, for example. Indeed, these leaders are in respected positions and are in a continuous learning environment. Their work is also valued by the hierarchy, and the work is visible and shared. Here it is also important to note that chefs ups possess all a motorbike to fulfill their professional duties. Research shows that mobility is a typical characteristic of teacher leadership, particularly when it comes to leadership based on the use of technology. Through the leadership and the capacity to push professional activities and innovative processes within the network, these leaders increase the value of being part of the network, meaning that the network will sustain as teachers want to be part of it, and to do so, they use the phone. To conclude, I would like to underline 3 points here. Firstly, this study illustrates how the introduction of mobile phones in a hybrid teacher training, combining face-to-face and distance learning, can lead to the genesis of collaborative teacher networks and generate positive educational outcomes, even in challenging environments such as Madagascar. This is a promising argument for development actors looking for appropriate tools to improve teacher training in developing countries. But the potential of phones goes far beyond their ubiquity. It's the progressive appropriation that comes with the expected benefits, as teachers can develop usages that sustain over time, autonomously, and without the support of a specific project. Given the organizational constraints of pilot projects, and given that long-term effects are the goal of development policies, this is a substantive result. Finally, this study clearly shows the power of social network analysis to comprehend how teacher networks are structured and sustained over a longer period. Indeed, through concepts, graphs, and measures, social network analysis allows to adopt multiple perspectives on the effects of ties and group dynamics. More generally, this study also confirms the need for social network analysis as part of more mixed method studies, as this approach allows an in-depth understanding of context and processes and the way these interact.